Magazine, and welcome to our webinar sponsored by Mold Making Technology and Cimatron. This afternoon, our topic is the real-time information revolution coming to a tool shop near you. We have two presenters from Industrial Mold and Machine. First is Wendy Voshek. She is a 17-year industry veteran and the current president. She started her career with Industrial Mold and Machine as a mold designer. She was then promoted to engineering manager and progressed to the head of operations before she assumed the role of president. Wendy has been a driving force behind the company's extensive adoption of cutting-edge technologies to streamline information flows and production processes. Wendy is also a board member of the American Mold Builders Association, as well as MAP, the Manufacturing Association of Plastics Processors, and she is a much sought-after speaker at many industry events. Joining her is Larry Housel, the head of IT at Industrial Mold. He is a visionary technology leader who is very passionate about leveraging information to give organizers a competitive advantage. Throughout his career, Larry has worked with a range of businesses to deliver lean concepts into information systems. While he has been at Industrial Mold, Larry has championed a transformation of the company's approach to information technology, which has propelled Industrial Mold into a leadership position in its industry and well beyond. As you listen to the presentation, please feel free to share your questions with us by typing them in the questions pane on your control panel, and those questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. And this webinar is being recorded, so there will be an opportunity to view the entire program online later. Thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. Here's Wendy and Larry.
Allowing Larry and me to share our story about IMM's path to becoming an information-driven company. Let's begin with some background on IMM. At Industrial Mold and Machine, we build better together with employees, customers, suppliers, and industry. We manufacture custom injection, blow, compression, and thermoset tooling. Over the years, many great people have joined the company, bringing expertise on various tool types. Our specialty is molds with many pieces. As you will see, our infrastructure supports tracking jobs with multiple items and multiple locations needing varying machining, outside service work, hardening, etc. We are a family-owned and operated company. My father began the company in the basement of our house when I was in high school, 25 years ago. This is a picture of my father and me. We have a succession plan and execution and have been for the last 3 years. As part of my journey, I needed to figure out how to give my family's business security, yet my father, like most experts, lacks the patience to methodically teach an apprentice, including me, what he knows. Frequently, when I press to find out why something is done, I hit what I call the common sense wall. I quickly came to realize I couldn't run a company on common sense. My father is one of the most skilled mold makers I know, but the phrase common sense doesn't answer my question, which is how and why we needed to do something. We began having production meetings that were designed to draw out the common sense, recording that information and going back to the gathered knowledge to firm up our production plan. Let's talk a bit more about knowledge. One of the biggest issues I think our industry faces is the successful transfer of knowledge to the next generation. Malcolm Gladwell states in his book Outliers that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. The apprentice doesn't realize how many hours and years it will take to master their skill. Surely one can't fathom all the things they will learn in that 10,000 hours. The experts, on the other hand, they have forgotten what it's like not to know. They have polished their craft over many years and it's second nature to them. With that little background, and before we go any further, I'd like to tell you a story from my personal life that I felt connected with the apprentice-journeyman relationship here at Industrial Mold. My daughter started school right around the time Larry and I were beginning to prepare this presentation, and I had a very interesting experience. My daughter is a 5th grader, and it's required that she play a musical instrument. Before school started, she selected the clarinet. We went and picked up the instrument at the music store and advised her not to play with it, since it is a very expensive item, and neither my husband nor I know how to put it together, much less play. Her instructions would have to wait until after the school year began, and she could be supervised by her music teacher. The first week of school, my daughter came home with music homework. The assignment was to put the clarinet together. My daughter is generally very responsible and autonomous in her work, so I don't pay much attention. Eventually, I hear sighs of frustration emanating from the room where she's doing her work, and as a parent, I intervene. She hands me this exact work instruction. I scanned it to share with you. Aloud, I started to read through the steps and assumed she would begin taking the pieces as described and assemble the instrument. Instead, she just listened to me, sitting there, dumbfounded, on how to approach the chore she had to do. I said to her, "Do you know what all the pieces are called?" Her response was that they reviewed it in class, but it was hard to follow, and she forgot. After looking at the paper, I was perplexed. The font looked to be something that a younger teacher would use, yet the instructions seemed like what I would have been given when I was in 5th grade, a long time ago. My next question was, "How old's your teacher?" To her response was, "Oh, Mom, much younger than you." The task would have been much easier if this was included with the instruction. Or even better, this, pictures and directions. But ultimately, what I ended up doing was Googling how to put a clarinet together, and the video you are about to see was the #1 hit. The video might be a bit choppy over the GoToWebinar connection, but you'll get the idea.
You take your lower joint and the bell, and you always put your fingers on the holes and hold them down so that you don't bend them. If you put your fingers across, you can bend the keys, and then they don't go down the whole way. So you hold with your fingers and the other way, and you rub your hands together back and forth. You never push straight on because you can ruin the cork. Next, you take the upper joint, and again, you hold the tone holes down with your fingers, and you always want to make sure that you push down the holes so that the little keys in the middle don't bump into each other.
Minutes later, the clarinet had been put together and taken apart 2 times, and I had a 10-year-old satisfied with her effort. So why did I tell you the clarinet story? My guess is my daughter's music teacher has the curse of knowledge, a cognitive bias in which the more knowledgeable a person is, the more difficult it is to think through what it's like not to be informed, to not know. Her teacher would certainly be a clarinet assembling expert, even in her youth. She has probably been putting together a clarinet since she was in the 5th grade. Since information is knowledge captured, for IMM to have a real-time information revolution, we must first find the knowledge. In mold making, that knowledge comes from experts, journeymen. But how does one happen upon such knowledge? In order to fully understand our approach at IMM, we need to further discuss this curse of knowledge. Using my father as an example, he simply cannot put himself in the mindset of not knowing. Much of our effort here focuses on knowledge transfer, and this is a critical aspect because when we know something, it becomes hard for us to imagine not knowing it. As a result, we become lousy communicators. Since what we are building here is an information system, this aspect of human nature cannot be ignored. At IMM, we are heavy in both apprentice and expert. Quite often, this makes for communication problems. We only have 5 employees who are in the 30 to 40-year-old age range, one of which actually makes molds. Because Larry and I are in this age range, we can help bridge communication. We are still practicing and learning our profession. We can remember what it's like to not know, to be that outsider looking in. In an effort to continue connecting the generations, the question we continue to ask is, how do we put a little of the expert in the apprentice and a little of the apprentice in the expert? Larry's now going to tell you how an information system can be used to help communicate.
Thanks, Wendy. So it was clear that for our organization to succeed, we needed both the expert and the apprentice to excel. Whatever information tool we used had to appeal to both of them. And so this is how we began our journey towards the real-time information revolution. We were attracted to the idea of a wiki-based information system because of its flexibility and because of the way it supported collaborating around information stores. Wikipedia is a great example of this. Manufacturing thrives on teamwork, and we wanted to leverage that same approach when it came to our information. At the time, sites like Facebook and Twitter were becoming extremely popular. Even our most hardened experts on the shop floor were getting Facebook accounts. So we went looking for software that leveraged the strengths of these popular web tools and applied them to the business environment. After trying to build our own version, it became apparent that we needed something more robust. Our search for a solution led us to a company called Social Text. They are part of a growing group of software providers that specialize in software called enterprise social networking, or Enterprise 2.0. Enterprise social software is a tool for sharing information. So we combined social text features with our information and created IMM Connect. And we began using it to collect the company's knowledge, but then quickly realized that it could also be a powerful tool for production. The next few slides show the dramatic change that our production plans have undergone since implementing this solution. Pictured is a standard production plan that we would print out for each component and hand over to the shop floor, along with any drawings or other related information. Once this plan was created for manufacturing, it was very difficult to change. If change was needed, the process involved editing, reprinting, and replacing it on the shop floor. This was unrealistic. We tried to reduce the changes by enforcing a standard plan. However, we quickly learned that while it is necessary to have a start with a good plan, our ability to adapt to circumstances that arise during production is what our organization excels at. We needed to create an information environment that supported our approach instead of being a burden to it. The overriding problem was that the paper traveler was only capable of one-way communication. It could talk to the shop floor, but it couldn't listen.
If a person couldn't find the paper traveler for the work piece, they would have to be directed by a supervisor about what was to be done next. Oftentimes, the decision was made in isolation without the visibility of the whole production plan for that specific piece or the leveraged skill set of the other experts in the organization. When people are information starved, it causes misalignment. How is it possible to work together when there's no clear plan? Using collaborative, centrally located information creates organizational alignment.
So we chose to combat misalignment by giving the organization the ability to collaborate around rich production information. Pictured is one of our current component pages. It builds on the concept of a traveler, but more closely resembles what might be a Facebook profile for one of our manufactured components. It contains relevant information, related data, and current status. The edit, comment, and add tag buttons indicate the page's ability to absorb information as well as dispense it. These features ensure that the production plan can be updated and kept accurate. It can also pull information from other resources. The material information seen here is actually pulled from the job's bill of material, which is maintained on a separate page. So edits to that bill of materials are reflected here instantly. It's also worth noting that the page's ability to store file attachments, that the page has the ability to store file attachments. You can see that the engineer has added 2D and 3D drawings to this page. And as the component moves through CNC, the programmers will load setup pictures and programming sheets. Most importantly, this page serves as a portal. Everything blue on this page is a link to other relevant information. Again, this mimics Wikipedia's ability to interconnect related information. The links you see can take you to related job components, relevant work centers, or back to the main job page. Although you can't see it in this screenshot, there's also links to learning material about this type of component and how it can be manufactured. Let's use the main job page as an example and bring up the page it's linked to. This is the main job or assembly page. We wanted to use this quick example to show how component pages not only house information but also link to other important information. Here you can see the link to this page contains the job's complete BOM. On the right are links to the rest of the component pages, as well as some attachments relating mostly to customer data like POs and part files. Now, I want to stress that the software is extremely flexible, and the structure has been built to our specific needs. A good example of this flexibility occurred recently when we found ourselves needing to increase our ability to manage customer interactions. Our solution was to create a customer page which houses all communications related to each job. This important information can now be easily accessed by simply clicking on a link. We faced many challenges building this information system, and not the least of which was bringing the shop floor online. Unlike office desks, the shop floor is not a computer-friendly environment, but we needed a way to access information there. It seemed the best solution was to rely on kiosks, computers set up in various locations on the floor. This solution had some drawbacks, however. First, members of the production team had to leave their natural workflow to input information in the kiosk. And second, because material moves around the shop and kiosks do not, information was often kept separate from material. I believe this problem was not unique just to industrial mold. Information technology has historically had difficulty positioning itself as a useful tool in manufacturing organizations because one of the most critical areas, the production floor, is not conducive to it. When the iPad was released, it seemed technology had finally caught up, and for the first time, our information system could spread throughout the entire company. By making our job pages portable, tablets quickly became a crucial part of our information system. So once we had robust job information and technology to effectively marry it with material, we encountered a new problem. We couldn't create information fast enough. We were starving for information on the shop floor.
The information system was in place. We had the iPads as a delivery mechanism, and a serendipitous occasion occurred. IMM hosted an AMBA plant tour last fall, and it was recommended to us by our peers that we investigate 3D design software. Our fellow mold makers could see an opportunity we had previously been unwilling to embrace. They described a simplified mold design process, design standards that were universally applied, and feature recognition to be used by programming. At the time of the tour, we were using a Pro-E and a CAD-Key 97 Mastercam combination for our mold designs. The main difficulty we foresaw with such switching software was we needed to be sure that we would be switching to one new software, not adding an additional program. After investigating viable options, we felt Cimatron could satisfy all our needs, so we made the commitment to purchase in December of 2011. Instantly with Cimatron, we had rich information. This is what our AMBA peers had seen on the plant tour, and they knew we could have this. 2D doesn't have the ability to communicate in the same way as 3D. Either method can be used. We're still building molds here. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a video is worth 1,000,000. Building a mental model of movement and function becomes much easier with 3D animation. Having this allows our mold-making experts to see how the mold is to function, not just what pieces need manufactured.
So Cimatron had a huge impact on our pre-production efforts. Prior to using its 3D capabilities, information gathering at this stage had always been fractured because of the efforts needed by our design staff to create different information for customers, job planning, and production. A complex system was created to support a staged release of data that lasted throughout the job process, sometimes right up until shipment. Today, when we have customer approval, we have all the information needed to produce the mold. This not only creates alignment with our customers, but also with our production team. Cimatron streamlined our information gathering issues in the most efficient way possible by simplifying it.
This slide highlights how 3D in color can communicate better than 2D in black and white. The chart in the upper left-hand corner is a tolerance legend, signifying the meaning and tolerance associated with each color. This information is stored in its current state on every page for every item we make. This kind of information allows an apprentice, who's shown in the upper right-hand corner, to concentrate on the aspect of his job that is much more difficult to communicate in mold making, like how to make the machine produce the part to spec. He's not trying to decipher both the print's intended outcome and a machine tool.
So this video is going to be a little choppy over the connection, but we wanted to include it as a real-life example of our information system at work. This is Kyle, our apprentice out on the shop floor, accessing his job information on his iPad while he's working at a machine. His need for information revolves around the machine he's working at, so his portal to the information is a machine page. There you can see the machine number, and when he goes to the iPad, he's going to bring up the page that he's working out of, which is the machine's page. Just like the job page we looked at earlier contains information and links relevant to the job, the machine page contains links and information relevant to it. In this case, he's looking for the component he's working on. Once he brings it up, he can access the information attached to the page, in this case a 2D file with some detail information, and then he can go back in and look for his programming sheet. They're all stored on this page, one central location, easily accessible through the browser on the web pad, or on the iPad. I should also note that all these files are exported from Cimatron and don't have to be converted in order to be viewed right on the iPad.
Kyle is a successful part of our production team, and since he is one of our apprentices, he is not yet an expert. So what makes Kyle successful at IMM? There are two approaches we could take: high expertise with weak information, or low expertise with rich information. With rich information, the images do the communicating instead of the people, thus reducing the curse of knowledge. This helps to support Kyle's success. Either one can be used to get the product out the door, but the second one additionally keeps parts of the knowledge into the company's possession at all times. Knowledge converted to information, then recorded. Now it's the company's expertise, not just the individual's. Thank you so much for your time. As we know it is a precious commodity, we value that you gave it to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy and Larry, for this informative presentation. We have had a couple of questions from the audience, so we can get started on those. In the meantime, feel free to submit your own questions by typing them into the question pane on your control panel, and we will do our best to get the answers to all your questions. The first question we have is, if you're using 3D successfully, why is the machinist in the video shown viewing a 2D drawing?
I can do it. You want
I
to?
want to say something too, but go
okay.
ahead.
We haven't made the commitment to go solely to 3D. We need to, and it's going to be imminent here in the near future. It's something that it's always been a preference to have 2D drawings on our production floor, and it just has not been an issue that we've taken the bull by the horns and just gotten rid of it. So we're working through that, and we actually talked about that already today in a separate meeting. So.
And yeah, I think that it's a hybrid environment, and in a lot of ways that is indicative of successful technology, because it needs to, if you're going to be rolling out something new, it still needs to support legacy environments, so to speak. So I think it shows how the technology is flexible and it can support both environments and produce and be a useful tool for people as we move forward, without having to traumatize anybody too much.
That sounds good. Our next question. It seems that you have been throwing a lot of new things at people that are already pretty busy doing their jobs, especially the experts. What was their reaction?
Oh boy. Well, when we deployed the iPads here, we use what we call a pull system for their implementation, and by that I mean it had the iPad and the information system when we first began needed to be requested by an expert or anybody within the company, and so it made the technology seem like it was something everybody should have in the company, instead of another tool that you're just pushing onto someone that they don't feel that they need to get their job done. So we had a lot of success with that. I think having youth in the organization certainly helps with that, because they know how to use this technology. It's part of who they are. It's what they grew up with.
And I think the struggle is to make it a useful tool. You don't want the information system to be a burden on somebody, and you don't want to have to make them use it, certainly. And that's why we took the time to discuss the kiosks, because I think they're a great example of a burden on the shop floor. You're asking people to not do production and go and fulfill the needs of something else. Go find the kiosk and input information or get the information you need. Whereas the iPads, because they're portable and they're easy to access, they become transparent. You almost don't notice that you're using an information system, and that's the goal. That's the key. Like you said, there's plenty going on out on the production floor without having to ask people to do extra or deal with something that is not in line with production.
Can I just say one more thing about that? I think it's funny because so many people require their employees to input data into an ERP. and then something like this can be viewed as disruptive instead of supportive, because you can quickly get it information and update the organization on the status of an item through this with much less effort than an ERP. It's part of the workflow. It's not off to the side.
Right.
Even with wands. Sorry.
Right. The goal again is to make it a useful tool, something that they want to use, that they need to use to do their job better.
And once it tips and everybody starts using it, it's like a snowball. It only compounds the amount of information and contribution that goes into it.
Sounds good. Question from, are you still using your Mastercam, or are you using Cimatron for all programming?
We're using Cimatron almost extensively.
Well, we use Mastercam still for electrode pull, but
yeah.
We're getting ready to convert that as well. So we went to, it was funny because working with Ralph as we were getting, Cimatron assimilated into engineering, and I said, well, it'll probably be about a year before we're ready for programming, and to have that come on board, because you can't really realize the full potential of programming until you're using it in design exclusively. And I think it was, Ralph, maybe you could speak up, but I think it was 3 months later I was calling him saying we needed a programming seat right away, because we were translating all these files, and we were having problems with storage because there was so many exported file formats going on, and it just didn't make sense. And then additionally, we weren't able to capitalize on the feature recognition and the catalog components that can be built in Cimatron.
Yeah, I think the big help too was setting up the right implementation and getting the design people moving, and that moving as fast as it did, just kind of pushed you forward faster than you expected.
Okay.
Yeah, we were concerned about keeping some of the old software running in case we had to access old files, I think, things like that. But I'm assuming at this point the concerns were unfounded. We must be able to access everything in Cimatron, because I've rolled out a couple new PCs since then, and they don't support, they're 64-bit PCs. They don't support our older software, so there has never been an issue. It wasn't even asked for. We just put Cimatron on it, and that was all. That's the only tool they need.
Okay, thank you. What development did you have to go through to link your ERP system to your IMM Connect? Did you have to tailor the IMM Connect to your current ERP, or vice versa?
The first one, we started using IMM Connect as kind of a front page to our ERP, and pulling information out of the ERP, and then slowly realized that IMM Connect was much more flexible, much more versatile, faster, and so we basically moved almost everything over into IMM Connect. We do still keep the ERP running in the background for some core functionality that its database has an advantage, or gives us an advantage on.
But we don't we schedule in IMM Connect. We do all our job planning in IMM Connect. We keep most of our customer interactions these days in IMM Connect. We do still do material purchasing and invoicing of jobs.
That's where the database is useful.
In the ERP. But there's definitely were moments in the last few years, couple years, that, not moments, periods of time where we were doing double data entry, one in IMM Connect and one in the ERP, until we realized, like Larry said, that IMM Connect is just a superior mechanism for both delivering the information and then supporting decision making. And plus, it's an anywhere, anytime item. I can get it into IMM Connect from my iPad in the car. I can do it in a hotel room. I can do it at home. I can't do that with our ERP. I have to VPN in, and it's a much more expensive process than, just logging into this web-based software.
Yeah, the IMM Connect turns the iPads or the PCs, the laptops, whatever they are, into a portal. You don't need any kind of client software. All you need is an internet connection and a browser, and you can get access to all of the company's important information.
Okay. Are there any plans for Industrial Mold to sell your customization of social text?
Who asked that? We frequently get asked that question, and right now we're having a hard enough time designing it for ourselves, but it's certainly been something that we've considered. But given the initial reason and success that we had deploying it with the push system versus the pull system and utilizing a pull system, it's hard to get my head around going into a company and pushing it on somebody unless the leadership is embracing it. So, and then that has to permeate down through the organization.
Yeah,
so.
and in the circles of this type of software, adoption is a big talking point. It's a big issue, and I think we've had the success that we have had because this is a tool for Wendy. She's the president of the company, and she wants to see information in a way that she understands and that she's comfortable accessing. And so because of that, the tool has kind of blossomed because, if the president is using it, then the rest of the company is using it.
Right.
And I think that's what leadership buy-in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because there's so many features inside of here. We house our employee handbook in here. We have a center for learning. We have a library. We have a safety. We have our MSDS in here. We have everything in here. And by me being involved in it, along with our HR manager and, just everybody in the whole organization, but that really allows us to keep looking at the product, the software, and saying, okay, how can we further leverage this? How can we, get more information in here? And, you saw the hyperlinks in the presentation, so we can then cross-collateralize information, which is, I mean, what better can you want in an organization?
Yeah, whereas I think an ERP is based on collecting historical data. This system is based on collecting real-time data, and that's why the name for the webinar kind of fits. You're looking for what's happening right now, and that's what it gives you.
I have a question. Employees are hopefully trustworthy, but how do you keep the valuable tools assigned and secure?
I'll take this one to start with. Everybody treats their iPad, we treat it as a personal device. We've had a lot of success with this. This goes back to some of the philosophy with the pool philosophy, but we have employees here who don't have computers at home. And so giving them something like a social network, an iPad, email, these are foreign, devices to them, objects, ways of thinking. I feel like a lot of times, and Larry probably has some comments on this, but, our employees would just fumble it into an ERP, into a data collection system because, that was part of their job. It wasn't something that they helped support their workflow at all. So we do treat the device as such. We've had a couple broken screens. We're using carbide tooling. We have, equipment on the shop floor. We've never had a lost device, a stolen device, a device that's, been mutilated in any way other than a cracked screen. And, we got our first round of 4 iPads when they first came out. What was that, 2010 or 2009?
I think it was 9.
2009. So we've had some of the iPads for a very long time. And because they're essentially, and we didn't talk about this in the webinar today, but they're essentially dumb devices. They're just portals to information. So they don't require mass amounts of hardware. They don't require a lot of maintenance. And it's actually a perfect tool for a production environment. So.
Yeah, and the system itself is secure. It's as secure as any credit card website, I guess. So from a security perspective, you've got those safeguards in place. And because it's in the cloud, it can be shut down from anywhere at any time, all the connections coming into our valuable information. And it can be controlled. I mean, we can you get a lot more, you get a more comfortable feeling with your information in a system like this than you would anywhere else, because you can see it, you can see what's happening to it.
I agree with that.
And how supportive has Cimatron been in the rollout of this whole process?
What was that? How has Cimatron been?
How supportive has Cimatron been while you're rolling out this process?
Well, Ralph, do you want to talk a little bit about, our first introduction and when we walked through the shop, and then we can sort of segue into, how the support that you've offered us?
Well, yeah. When I first met with Wendy and her team, the walk through the shop and her goals, and definitely with the apprenticeship program, it was something that Cimatron was very interested in participating in. I think the big thing was, coming with a plan, starting slowly, migrating, where the pains were first, but keeping in mind that, not shifting the pain or the bottleneck. And I think the communication together, with Wendy and her team helped move this along a lot faster than both of us expected. And it was, she had a goal to get someplace, and, we worked together to get it done. And, it's always tough to learn a new software and implement it in. Just made sure that we did, the right steps in the process, and moved along very quickly.
And if I can intervene,
Yeah.
just from an IT, from a support perspective, I spend, if it was a bar graph, you would see the big bar on the left side and almost nothing on the right side when it comes to my time keeping Cimatron up and running. With the older software, there was constantly problems. There was little or no support because it was older software, or because there wasn't the ability for people to get quick feedback, I guess. But with Cimatron, I hear sometimes about problems being resolved through their technical support, probably faster than it would be resolved if they contacted me, and I had to go through the channels and look up the information. So from that perspective, it's been a real blessing. Furthermore, they've worked with us when we've had difficulty on the iPads, which admittedly is not mainstream. But when we've had issues and tried to work through them through different applications and things like that, they've always been available and willing to help.
I think it's worth pointing out that when we were showing that video where Kyle was spinning that slide in 3D, that to get to that point on an iPad was probably 2 years for us to be able to do that, not because of Cimatron, just the iPad and the apps and the technology. We were starving for that information to be available. And Ralph has worked a lot with us to help us get apps or file formats that are supported by the apps that are available, which are not a lot. There's not a lot of options out there to do the kind of things that we want to do, in the delivery mechanisms for the iPads. We have, ideas about other new ways we could be doing things, that we just don't have the supported infrastructure with just what people are developing available. But the flip side of that is Cimatron, and Ralph specifically, has just been so helpful and patient with us. So many people just will go back to Microsoft, go back to a Microsoft product. You need Microsoft. Well, all the things we just said about the iPad, they're simple to use. They're accessible for people who don't have computers at home. I don't think we'd have the success we have if we were in an open environment, with file structures and storage systems. And Ralph's always been really, supportive of that and that vision here.
Can the system be used to plan and prioritize work requests in the shop? And how does it handle changes in priorities?
Very simply, it handles them is the answer, and yes, we use them. We place jobs into priority positions throughout the whole production cycle, so when one job ships, everything advances over a priority. And if for some reason, we're in the middle of doing a mold modification work and we realize that the customer dinged a part in the cavity, didn't mention to us, and we ran across this area and the piece now needs to be laser welded, just for example. So that job's in priority position 1 because it's getting ready to leave when we're in bench and we notice this. We obviously can't be in priority position 1 anymore because the customer in this case wants us to go ahead and get that welded, bench it, and fix it so when they get it back it's in good shape. We can slide it over into priority through widgets. I mean, through just drag and drop items on the iPad. I do this on the production floor to a different priority pace. And then every item that's associated with that job, if there's multiple components or whatever, get reassigned with the new priority.
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple things about that as well because I think it's such a huge part of what we've done here. When I first started down the IT journey here at Industrial Mold, my main goal was to get a scheduling system in place that would work because if you're running a mold shop, you know that the schedule is, in a lot of ways, the lifeblood of the organization and the planning that goes on with the molds. So we struggled mightily with that. And like Wendy said, we didn't have the ability to just simply grab something and pull it forward and let go of it and have that be the new priority. And social text allowed us to do that. It allows that real-time fluctuation that actually mirrors what's really happening out on the job floor. There's no plan that you're setting into place and pressing a button 8 weeks out from a delivery date and then watching it execute perfectly till it ships. There's a lot that goes on in 2 months. There's a lot that goes on with just the job, much less the rest of the shop. So, that success, I think, for me, has driven the software and the usage of it more than anything else. And, as Wendy mentioned, and this goes back to the iPads being dumb terminals and her being able to access it from anywhere. You want to make a schedule change on something in an ERP, you're going to log into that client, you're going to find the job, you're going to set up something, and you're going to execute it, and it's going to go through its database and reorganize everything. If you want to change something in this environment, you're dragging it around on an iPad. We recently got a television. Newer televisions now come with web browsers built into them, and so we're dragging things around on the television screen up in pre-production to line up how we're going to bring them into production. So it really does make internet devices portals to your information, any internet device, whether it be a computer or a television.
And I think, when we freed ourselves to get to deviate from the ERP production scheduling and allow ourselves to embrace something that was more flexible, richer in information, and let us do a better job for our customers, it was liberating. And that's what we have now.
One of our attendees would like to know, how is the 3D file shown and what app or plugin was used to view it on the iPad, and also what file formats are compatible?
Well, what we were looking at with Kyle, he was looking at 3 different file formats. He was looking at an Excel file and a PDF. The Excel file was the programming sheet, and the PDF was the 2D drawing, and both of those are viewable right inside the browser. So the iPad, right out of the Apple Store, can view both of those files. The 3D file was viewed in a program called Turbo Viewer, which they have a free version, and then they have a paid version, and it allows you to bring up 3D files. I think that particular format was DWG. That's what we use, and it allows shading and rotation. It also allows us to see the PMI information that Cimatron adds to the file.
And PMI is that we can put dimensions on the 3D files, so thus reducing our dependency on 2D drawings.
Okay. Is the small screen a hindrance, someone is asking?
It is, I think, in the places where it's a hindrance, its ability to deliver the information is more beneficial. So if you would prefer to look at something on a 42-inch a plotted piece of paper, then you would do that, obviously. However, you needed the information right now, and you didn't have the time to go and ask an engineer to print something out, or didn't have the piece of, the information around you, then the smaller screen is not a hindrance. And the same way you can look at Google Maps on an iPad or even an iPhone and navigate the city of Cleveland, you can navigate a mold the same way by just moving it around, zooming in and out.
Okay. So many questions. I apologize to those that I may not be getting to. If we do not get to your question, they will be followed up with a phone call or an email. Someone wants to know, are you taking any steps to prevent theft or damage to the tablets?
A wise person once told me that if you have to put places in like metrics in like that or countermeasures in like that, you have a personnel problem, not a technology problem. And that was Larry that said it when I came to him and wanted to know about securing email or something. You know, and let's not be naive here, but you know, you want to make sure you have the right people in your company, and it does require a special group, which we have here. And you know, I guess that's what I have to say about theft and things like that. You know, we have 37 employees here, so we're not 38 employees, so we're not. We're not so big. It's hard to keep, you know, sort of an awareness about people, and you know, them as people. So.
Yeah, I mean the axiom that Wendy was quoting was, I think, from one of my old Novell instructors from many years ago, and he was basically making the point that you cannot solve a management problem with, you know, security lockdowns on a computer. All you're going to do is hinder efficiency when it comes to accessing information. That being said, the theft issue with the iPad, I suppose, is real. However, you know, they're not. They're coming down in price. I imagine in 10 years you'll be able to buy them at a gas station. So right now they're considered a commodity, but I think as time goes on, it becomes less and less. You know, they become more like a, you know, uniform or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A question about Kyle, one of your employees. Are you able to limit what Kyle has access to versus what your project manager has access to? And are you able to access this information if you are off-site at a customer's, for example?
So the first part of the question is we can give rights to all the workspaces within the company. So every employee, for example, would have access to the production workspace that we were looking at. The handbook every employee would have access to. But then there's a workspace that is customer credit, and it's basically our accounts receivable and our aging and all of that. And there's about 5 people have access to that workspace. And so, you know, this is why you need to have a secure server license on something like this, so we can guarantee that that can't get, you know, violated in any way. So definitely you can. You can lock out certain areas or open up certain areas, I guess would be the more proactive way of stating that. And certainly you can get anything, any of the information that you have access to at a customer site. I actually was at a customer's last week and just reviewing how we use the social network and pulling up files and spinning them just to show, just to demo it. But
okay. Oh, my computer froze just for a second. I think we have so many questions coming in. Do your machinists do their own programming, or do you have staff just for that function?
we have people with CNC machining experience making programs. And one of our programmers has, I think, 15 years animatronic experience. Ralph, do you know the number that Joe has?
Probably more like 10.
What was that?
More like 7 years.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, here's.
And then
your programmer, Joe, is programming and running the machines?
no, he's just programming.
Okay.
Here's
We
an
don't.
interesting.
Our programmers
sorry.
program our machinist machine.
Okay. Was there a reason you picked Apple over Android?
Android wasn't.
No, go ahead.
Android wasn't out.
But I think that's a great question. I actually got an Android tablet. As soon as the Nexus 7 came out, I pushed Wendy on it and got one in here to see how it worked. And it's a great device. I think that people could have success with it the same way as we do the iPads. The iPad was released far ahead of its time. I think even the current Nexus 7 that released, and I'm not an Apple fanboy by any means, it's still kind of catching up, just in the ease of use. The iPad is very easy to use. I mean, it's tactile, so you just use your hands to access the information, and it's simple. The envelope with a 1 on it means you have an email, that kind of thing. You put links right on the dashboard or desktop right to the relevant information inside of our system, so they can just click on gun drill and it'll bring up the related gun drill information just with one tap on the screen. Not that the Android can't do that, but we started out with it just because there wasn't anything. When the iPad released, it was truly a game changer. There really wasn't anything even remotely close to what it was.
We really couldn't even build a business case for buying the iPads when we bought them, other than we just felt like there was something there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a big part of my desire to, I was running an information network on one half of a company, and it wasn't even, the production part of it, like I said in the presentation. I think it's so important to bring manufacturing online, and the tablets allow you to do that. So.
Someone would like to know
My
how
dad.
many... Oh, I'm sorry?
Can you? Sorry. Oh, my dad too. Through that whole, he was more than supportive and let us just get these 4 iPads, which is, in hindsight, his effort to help support driving into the future. And it's always been something that's great about industrial is that, we've always been progressive technologically and open-minded about doing different things. So, when Larry came to me, what was that, an Android tablet?
Yeah.
Yeah. When he came to me about that, it's like we didn't want to get stuck in the Apple rut. But after having the device here, it just doesn't operate the same way as iPad.
And someone wants to know how many iPads are on the shop floor, if you haven't already answered that.
We haven't. Oh my, I've lost. Guess 30.
I think it's around there. Yeah.
Around 30. Every production, everybody who makes molds here has an iPad. So the most recent 2 that were delivered were to polishers that with back to that legend and that 3D, on that one slide with Kyle, we are mold polishers. A request to have access to this information so that they could see, it's not shown here, but brown is shut off, but so that they could see, oh no, yellow shut off, sorry, but so the polishers could see and spin and use this on the iPad to tell which areas needed, to be shut off, fit, all of that. And that happened just within the last month.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where, going to the question earlier about the burden on the shop floor and the experts by asking them to use the technology, the polishers here are, they have such a great skill set and they're so good at what they do, and I just never envisioned how they would use the technology. But what I found out was they were going and grabbing other people's iPads to look at these 3D drawings so they could see where the shutoff was, and then of course, it's like, oh well, how silly of me not to.
Right.
To see that, they were finding their own use for it instead of us trying to figure out how they should be using it.
I mean, and that's pull working beautifully, right? They wanted the device. The device makes their life easier. It's it's perfect.
Right. Everyone has such great questions. I'm afraid we only have time for one more, but I think this is a great one to end things with. The question is, it looks like you've done a lot of great things. What are some of your future plans?
You want me to?
Go ahead, yeah.
I guess I've always looked at it like I want the information system to be of value. I want it to be value add to the product. So, we ship a great product here, and if I can, I can't make molds, but I can develop something that would help make the molds better for the customer. So it would differentiate one of our molds from another shop's mold. And so if the information system can do that, and it can provide better information on the shop floor to our apprentices and experts, and also to the customer, which was in fact the original vision, was to build something that we could collaborate with our customers better with, then that is still a goal, and I think that's the direction we're actually slowly starting to take it. I mentioned keeping customer communications in here. Customers call their molds one thing, we call them something else because we're on two different systems. But with social text, we're able to link to what they call it, and then behind that link have the information that's relevant to them about it and their questions. So I think we're going in that direction, and I'd like to see it continue that way.
I agree with that 100%. I'd love to see us, and with which we are, to continue to develop the customer portion of the social network, because what we're finding is that the customers just want instant information. Frequently when you send them, status updates, you don't even hear anything back. They've got a lot going on. They are working through a lot of issues on their end, similar to the things that we work through on our end, and they need that update. And they need it when they either request it via email or call, and to be able to build a system that they could go get it themselves would be phenomenal. It's been an area we've stumbled over. We haven't been able to get it built yet, but some lessons are served up really good. We'll use what didn't work and apply it as we build something that will work. So I expect us to, that's in the near future. As a matter of fact, like Larry said, we're already working on it. We're building something similar to a CRM in the back end of all the jobs with an email. So any of our customers that are on the phone, if you see job-information at industrialmold.com, you're sending it into our social network, your job information.
Yeah, you're emailing IMM Connect.
Yeah, you're emailing into IMM Connect.
Wow, that was a lot of great information. I think my brain is on overload. I hope everyone else's is, and I hope everyone found this as informative as I did. Thank you, Industrial Mold and Cimatron, and thanks to everyone at the magazine Behind the Scenes that helped with the webinar, and everyone, this concludes the webinar. Have a great day, and hope to see you here again soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.